Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 315 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And how are you doing today, Rick?
Doing well. Good day to you. Good day to our listeners and all Canadiens fans out there. And welcome again to the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Who are we? Well, we're a long-form podcast. You know, we talk about the things in a deeper context with thoughtful conversations. And we have, as it says in our intro, deep connections to the hockey community, and we make our Canadiens connections here, and we're in mid-camp swing here. 3 games completed already, 3 games yet to go. Lots of decisions to be made, and lots of questions remaining about this team and about this season. And we may not be able to answer the questions today, but we're certainly going to raise 10 burning questions that Habs fans are dying to know.
So with preseason underway here, lots of games to watch. This past week we had 3. We have a lot more to come, and then we get to the regular season. So very excited, lots of excitement in the air in Montreal. And for the first time in a while, I hopped on the Metro the other night, and I saw an abundance of Habs jerseys, so that's always fun to see. So in this first segment, we'll get you up to date on everything Montreal Canadiens, including roster updates. We'll talk about the prospects and then some news from around the NHL. In segment 2, we have our 10 burning questions about the Montreal Canadiens for the 2024-2025 season. Very excited to get to that, like you mentioned, Rick. And in segment 3, it's a Have Your Say segment. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is who is the most overrated and underrated Canadiens prospects. We want to hear from you, and I'm very excited to hear from the listeners about this one. Rick, if people are interested in reaching out to let us know, whether it's answering that question or just some general comments, what's the best way to do so?
The easiest way is to reach out to our Rocket Sports text line. Text us 24 hours a day, and it's easy to remember. It's 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET. Text us anytime, again, 24 hours a day. And as you said, answer our question, ask your own question, or leave us a comment. We're always glad to hear from you.
You can also reach out to us on social media. Just make sure that you are following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, CanadiensConnection.fm. And here's what's happened since we've been gone. The Canadiens have begun their 6-game preseason schedule, and we've had 2 wins and 1 loss in 3 games so far. So the 2 wins, let's start with that. On the 23rd, that would be Monday this past week, the Philadelphia Flyers came to town to visit Montreal, and Montreal wins 5-0. So double shutouts for the goaltenders who split the game. Primo and Dobish were in goal for that one. 5 goals scored by the Montreal Canadiens. I believe that was 4 in the third period. What a terrible night for Flyers goaltender Cal Peterson. He did not look good in that whatsoever, leading to that Montreal offensive explosion. So good to see that. And then the very next day on Tuesday, the New Jersey Devils come to town, and that's another shutout for the Montreal Canadiens as they win 3-0. 2 goals by Michael Pezzetta, double shutout from Hughes and Montembeault. Really offensiveless night from the New Jersey Devils. And I will say, these first 2 games here, these were very much B squads from the other teams. So I'll take everything with a grain of salt because that wasn't a very stiff competition, was it, right?
No, you're absolutely right. The Flyers and the Devils coming into Montreal, and a very thin lineup when it comes to quality NHL players. And so you can understand even the Flyers game, 5-0 final, but was much closer than the score would indicate. As you said, Cal Peterson gave up some goals in quick succession there in the third period, which opened the floodgates. But it had to feel good for someone like Jeff Gorton, who declared as the training camp was beginning that the Canadiens were going to focus on defense. They were going to focus on cutting down their goals against, which was a big problem last year. And so even though preseason, even though it was some less than stellar lineups from the opposition, they had to feel good about the defensive play in allowing no goals in their first 2 preseason games.
And the Montreal Canadiens did face off against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Thursday night in Toronto. Jakub Dobeš would get the entire game there, putting up 32 saves in the loss as the Montreal Canadiens lose 2-1. Montreal only putting up 17 shots, Dvorak with the lone goal, and Toronto definitely gave them a little bit more competition. I think that Toronto essentially doubled up the shots on goal there too, so a little bit lopsided. But the score was definitely close.
Again, the visitors had the weak lineup, and in this case, it was the Montreal Canadiens. The Leafs with a much stronger lineup, and I think the Canadiens did well to keep the score close, and that was perhaps mostly due to superb play by Jakub Dobeš.
So the Canadiens' record through the preseason is 2-1-0. We still have some more preseason to get through. Make sure that you follow our daily Habs posts throughout the offseason via @Rocket Sports on Twitter, and check out our exclusive content at InsideTheCanadiens.com. And now we have some roster news. 59 players remain in Canadiens training camp as of time of recording here on Saturday. Still waiting for an announcement on some cuts. I know some other teams have started to put some players on the waiver wire, send some players down to their AHL affiliates. I'm curious how quickly the Montreal Canadiens will turn around and do this now.
Yeah, the only thing that really happened, and that was on Friday, is the groups. They have 3 groups this year, Team 1, 2, and 3, and they were kind of reshuffled a little bit. And so you have mostly NHL players in Group 1, although it includes Farrell and others, and mostly the AHL players in Group 2. Group 3 is the guys who are going to be fighting for a job in Laval and will probably end up in Trois-Rivières. So Marty St. Louis handled Group 1, Pascal Vincent Group 2, and I think it was Paul Byron with the Group 3 folks. Nice. I think we're going to, as you said, they're going to pare down the camp at some point, and that's probably going to happen relatively soon. Lane Hudson has been great in camp and's got a lot of attention from the media and from the fans, and deservedly so. Owen Beck, Emil Heineman, and also Oliver Kapanen. But we'll just mention that Oliver Kapanen was missing on Friday from the practice. He took a therapy day on Friday, and on Saturday he skated with the players who won't be playing against Toronto on Saturday night. So probably nothing major there, but something that we'll keep an eye on.
Yep, absolutely. And Caden Gooley was spotted doing a little bit of a skate the other day. We know that he's currently day-to-day being reevaluated. He had an appendectomy just a couple of weeks ago, and he's still recovering from that. Certainly something you want to be careful of. And just last week, if you missed it, we did have Dr. Stephen Morris give us a full explanation on appendectomy and the recovery time. So if you missed it, tune into last week's episode.
Yeah, it was a great explanation by Dr. Stephen Morris, because this kind of came out of the blue that the Canadiens just announced a week ago that Caden Gooley had an appendectomy, and that they wouldn't be announcing anything for a week until he was reevaluated. Well, that week was up. And they set his status as day-to-day. As you said, he skated in Brossard at the end of this past week. And then Saturday morning, he skated with his teammates for the first time. Still, like day-to-day, there's no timeline that the Canadiens have attached to him returning, and whether he'll be available for opening night roster is unknown. Coincidentally, I guess, this past week, the Anaheim Ducks announced that goaltender John Gibson had underwent an emergency appendectomy. What's going on here? But differently, the Anaheim was a little different. They said he's expected to be out 3 to 6 weeks. So does a similar timeline apply to Caden Gooley? Well, the Canadiens aren't saying, but that's information that we can add to the puzzle, I guess, we're facing.
Yeah, that's for sure. And good catch there, Rick. I guess there's something going on. I wonder who's going to be next, and I hope no one's next with an appendectomy, eh?
Things happen in threes. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Canadiens practiced their new look power play on Friday. Last season, I guess the old look power play operated at 17.5%. So we'll wait and see how things look, if things end up improving. And I think this is going to tie in very nicely with our second segment.
I think so too. The power play finished 27th in the league last year. We know that Alex Burrows started, his responsibility was the power play. Marty St. Louis took over partway through the season, but wasn't able to have success. He's got a brand new approach and kind of unveiled the two units this season. The first power play unit, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Kirby Dach, Juraj Slafkovsky, and Mike Matheson. The only change there really is Kirby Dach inserted back from injury. The positions that they play are a little different. Nick Suzuki isn't in his spot that we got accustomed to seeing him last year. The second power play, the second wave of the power play, Brendan Gallagher, Joshua Waugh, Patrick Laine. Folks were wondering if he'd be on the first power play. Alex Newhook and Lane Hutson. Again, I think fans would like to see Lane Hutson replace Mike Matheson, and that can still happen. One of the things that Marty said after the practice was that he has more choices this season, more depth, and that gives him more options. So I expect that players on those first two, on the two units, will be a little bit more interchangeable. Mike Matheson made a really interesting comment. I thought it was a little odd, to be honest. And speaking about the power play, he says, quote, "It wasn't a priority," referring to last year, "but it's important now," end quote. He went on to say, quote, "We spent a lot of time last season focusing on our 5-on-5 game, and now we're trying to improve in another facet of the game." So they weren't trying last year. It wasn't a focus. Fascinating, actually, that that if that's the case, it's fascinating. That he would say that is also fascinating. Yeah, it's a priority this year, and listen, for a club that may not be able to compete night in, night out with elite talent, you can kind of balance the bar, make it up on the power play. And it's kind of a surprise if what he said is correct, that they haven't been doing so already, that it hasn't been a focus, but it is now.
Yeah, that's truly bizarre, and I think that's a good time for us to get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Each week, we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week we will shine the spotlight on ZSC Lions forward Vincenz Rohrer. So he's been playing with Zurich the past 2 seasons here. I know last season he was certainly a good utility player, pretty good and responsible defensively. Well, so far this season, he's put up 4 goals in 5 games, and he's off to a pretty good start offensively. That's really nice to see for this young prospect.
Yeah, he got started early on in the season and played the Champions group. And in that, he had 3 points in 4 games, including 2 goals. So far this season, all goals, 4 goals, no assists. It's really nice to see. Presently, he's tied for the league lead in goals. So a great start by Vincenz Rohrer, someone that you interviewed and spoke to a while back, and we remember he was a 3rd-round pick in 2022 by the Canadiens.
So we'll keep an eye on him throughout the season and keep you up to date for sure. Under our Ivan Demidov update, Demidov was named KHL Rookie of the Week, 7 points in 9 games played so far this season. And like I was saying before, maybe half jokingly, I think they should just give Demidov the Rookie of the Week every single week. I'd be happy to see that.
Yeah, and again, calming the fears of Canadiens fans who were worried that he wasn't going to get any ice time, he wasn't going to be able to show his true talent. There, he is named. He's named Rookie of the Week by the KHL. He had a goal, his 4th in that in a game this week. St. Petersburg scored 8 in that game, so he wasn't alone. Bit of a offensive flurry. This will work itself out, and I think it'll be a good experience for Demidov this year.
And Rick, I think you had an Ottos Koivu update from this morning. I know there's a bit of a time change where he's playing, but he scored a goal.
He did, and I should say his first goal, first career goal. Plays for TPS Turku. He's playing on the first line, and his first career Liga goal on Saturday morning for us, later for them. Great to see him on the top line. Interesting to see that on his team he wears number 9. Doesn't wear number 11 like his dad. He wears number 9 like his uncle Miku. That number 9 retired by, I think it's the only number retired by the Minnesota Wild. But we had a quote from him a few episodes back saying how much he looks up to his uncle, and has followed that up by wearing his number. Of course, if he gets to Montreal, that will no longer be an option for him. But good to see him with his first career Liga goal.
Some Laval Rocket news. The preseason schedule begins next week, so really looking forward to having this Laval Rocket season go underway. And when can we look out for the first game, Rick?
Well, it'll be next weekend. The Rocket play only 2 preseason games. Both of those games are going to take place at the CAA Arena in Belleville. Although they're not playing Belleville, both games are going to play Toronto one game on Saturday and may have that reversed. They're playing 2 games Saturday and Sunday at the CAA Arena. Their opponents will be the Marlies and the Belleville Senators.
Of course, lots of Toronto fans in Belleville, so you know that they're going to pack that house either way. It's too bad.
Get out there if you're nearby. If you're nearby Belleville, Habs fans, you know what you have to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can find all our content about Canadiens prospects at our Rocket Sports YouTube account. Just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com. And now it's time for our quote of the week, and this one comes from Jakub Dobeš, wanting to show Jakub Dobeš a little bit of love here as he played a full preseason game against the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto, and here's him talking about his preparation to play Scotiabank Arena.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not panicking anymore. I feel like I'm prepared, and not even the crowd or anything really gets in my way. I just feel like it's a normal game for me, and just feel it's like a normal day, I feel like playing in Laval in front of so many people made me ready for this type of atmosphere, and I'm just living normal games, normal day, and I'm really happy, with my composure during a game.
He's a fascinating guy, really interesting personality, and the one thing that he played the most games of any goaltender, not a rookie, but any goaltender in the AHL last season. And his game just grew and grew and grew. He got better and better and better. And I think he got much calmer as the season went on. And as you said, he played the entire game, which is an honor usually reserved typically for your NHL goaltenders, but he got the entire game against the Leafs and played as you said when you did the recap. The Leafs doubled the Canadiens in shots, and Jakub Dobeš made some spectacular saves, especially in the second period, and was very calm. And he said, part of the reason he can stay so calm is because that's a pretty boisterous place that he plays, Place Bell, with 10,000 fans on some nights, and so he's become used to the noise, the excitement, the pressure of playing in front of so many fans, and he was able to use that in his appearance at Scotiabank Arena on Thursday night. I think I know that the Canadiens fans are ready to jump from Sam Montembeault to Jacob Fowler. But don't sleep on Jakub Dobeš. And we're going to be talking about underrated and overrated prospects, and he's somebody that you should think about on your underrated prospect list.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And heading towards the end of this segment, we do have some hockey news and notes from around the league. Starting off here, the Buffalo Sabres have named Rasmus Dahlin their new captain. So he's a veteran of 6 seasons. He's a former first overall pick. Really good defenseman, maybe a little bit underrated, but I think this is a really good pick for the captain. I appreciate that the Sabres were very patient on waiting for him to be ready to take on the honor. And very well handled by everyone, and congrats to Dahlin.
I remember being one of the first people to interview him one-on-one, first in North America interview, and that was one of the summer showcases. And he was very nervous, very polite, but obviously nervous. And I give credit to the Sabres that you recognize his talent on the ice, but it's going to take time for those for that confidence and leadership skills to build. And I know we don't like the Sabres, and I know the Sabres are going to be competing for one of those spots in the Atlantic. But I think this is the right move. We should mention that he'll be supported by Alex Tuck, Luke's brother, of course, Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelsson, and Tage Thompson as alternate captains in Buffalo.
The NHL waiver wire has been very active and starting to heat up. Just yesterday, a number of players were put on waivers, a few that have Montreal connections, like Belpedio, also Alex Belzile. If you want him back, now's your chance. Lots of good players, a few tweeners. A little bit surprised that I think Maxine Scanette, the Ottawa prospect, I thought he had a pretty good camp. Surprised to see him on waivers at this point. But I think that if you're Montreal, you should consider maybe starting to put some of your AHL veterans on waivers in the coming days. Yeah,
it was the Flyers that put Louis Belpedio on waivers after that game. He did play in that game against Montreal on Monday. Alex Belzile, of course, with the Rangers. All former members of the Laval Rocket, also former member of the Laval Rocket, Guillaume Brisebois, nice. If you remember him, with Vancouver, and Stéphane Matteau, that Stéphane Matteau Jr., essentially, with Columbus. All former members of the Laval Rocket, all placed on waivers this week.
Some news out of the KHL. Defenseman Tony DeAngelo signed a 1-year contract with SKA, so the offensive defenseman with very little D-zone upside didn't really draw much interest from NHL teams, I think partially due to some known attitude issues. So he's going to go over to SKA, and I believe he's joining someone that we're very familiar with on that team.
Indeed. Tony DeAngelo picked up, he played his first game, and he picked up his first career KHL point on Friday. And it just so happened he assisted on a goal by Ivan Demidov, and that was his fourth goal of the season. So DeAngelo, kind of a shot pass and nicely redirected by Demidov. The DeAngelo to Demidov connection has begun.
Nice. To end things here, Sportsnet ranked its top 50 players in the NHL based on expectations for the 2024-25 season. Taking a guess, I believe Connor McDavid is number 1. I think that's the easiest choice here. I didn't really see too many Montreal Canadiens, but I do see one Nick Suzuki at 47. They noted here that he took a big step forward offensively, so they're hoping that he can repeat that in the coming season.
Yeah, for Canadiens fans who are expecting big things from the team and expecting big things from a number, whether it's Patrick Laine or Cole Caulfield or Juraj Slafkovsky or any of these players, it had to be a bit of a disappointment that just one player made the list. And as you said, number 47 made it at the very bottom of this list. I don't know if this is in response to comments by Canadiens fans, but our friend, Sportsnet scout, Jason Bukala, he's appeared on the show before, added 10 names to that list, and included in the 10 names, let me see the names he added. Jake Ottinger, yeah, okay, I'm good with that. Wyatt Johnson, Brock Faber, Robert Thomas, Clayton Keller, and Tage Thompson, who we just mentioned, and Juraj Slafkovsky. So Juraj Slafkovsky gets in the, if you went to a top 60, he would be included, according to Jason Bukala. I think that, I'd ask the question, looking at a list like this, whether Nick Suzuki still has an outside chance to be selected for the Four Nations Cup. He kind of snubbed. He skipped the the invitation that he got. Whether that will have an effect or not, whether this list has an effect or not, whether the start of the season, if he's off to a good start with a newly revamped power play, has an effect that's yet to be seen.
And there's many more questions will be coming up in the next segment. Coming up here first, we will have a brand new message from our sponsors, DraftKings. Definitely recommend listening into that one. And then it's our big topic segment as we get to our 10 burning questions that could define the Canadiens' 2024-25 campaign. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house. Whatever you call a touchdown, they matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. In fact, I actually did this past weekend, building a parlay of a multitude of players who I believed were all going to score a touchdown at some point during their games. Are you ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast, right here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella, and you can find me on Twitter at The Spinella. With me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, CanadiensConnection.fm. And just a little reminder here to tap that subscribe button to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcast app. That way, you never miss a single one of our episodes. And, well, expectations have been raised for the Montreal Canadiens this 2024-25 season. Players, management, and especially fans are brimming with optimism about the upcoming campaign.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of excitement on the street. There's a lot of excitement on social media for this team. And while there's fewer, we mentioned just 59 players in camp, fewer players to start training camp this year. I think there's been a real noticeable boost in talent. We've heard Marty St. Louis say that he has more options. He said this is the deepest group of players that he's ever coached. And he said there will be more than 23 players that are involved with the Montreal Canadiens this year. Listen, all that said, it's likely again that the Habs fans are going to have to moderate their expectations. Just calm down. The primary objective remains the development of Montreal's young core of players and also providing them with a quality year of NHL experience.
So with training camp in full swing, some offseason questions have been answered, but there are a number of key issues that remain unanswered. In this segment, we will present our first look at the 10 burning questions about the Montreal Canadiens heading into the 2024-25 season. And to start things off, how about some Juraj Slafkovsky? I think this is going to be an interesting player to keep an eye on. Certainly one that fans have grown very fond of over the years here. So Juraj Slafkovsky produced at a 70-point pace for the second half of the 2023-24 season. Can he maintain that level of production for an entire season? Remember last year, he ended up getting to a 50-point year. But to start the season, he was not great, and on our podcast, we were very concerned, even suggesting that he could need some time in the AHL before he was put up on that top line and started producing pretty well next to Nick Suzuki.
And I think that fans are remembering the last half of the season and kind of forgetting about the first half of the season.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at least on my end, I think what changed was seeing him shoot a lot more. I'm very curious to see what he can do. And I would love to see him be able to keep up that 70-point pace. But we're yet to see him do that over a full 82.
Yeah, shooting the puck, he said everyone was telling him shoot the puck, including he got a text from his mom saying shoot the puck. Last year. But listen, his MO is as a playmaker. Realistically, it's as a playmaker. So he can't get away from his identity necessarily. But listen, it's one thing to play really well for half a season, but can you do it for an entire season? And I think that's a real burning question for this year. Can he maintain the level of production for an entire season? There's a really interesting article in La Presse this past week by Matthias Brunet, and he looked at the third year of comparable type players. When we talk about comparable players, where they win in the draft and the expectations of them. And Matthias Brunet, from his research, he said that most players dropped their production in their third year. He mentions Matthew Benier dropped in his third season. He mentions Kent Johnson taking a big drop. Somebody like Lucas Raymond, who you expect was just consistent as anything, he took a big drop in his third year. Andrei Svechnikov dropped in his third year. So you know who increased? Pierre-Luc Dubois. Let's not compare him. Let's not compare him to Pierre-Luc. And Tim Stützle had an increase in his third year. So I mean, this is we're with all of these. We're raising questions. We can't provide you the answers at this point. It's something that's going to unfold, but it's really going to be crucial to the success of these questions. Answering these questions are crucial to the success of the Montreal Canadiens this season.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So ready for the next question here. This one's about Kirby Dach, who we didn't see much last season. And we are asking, can Kirby Dach play a full NHL season avoiding major injury? So this will be his sixth season. He's yet to play a full 82 games. The closest he came was 70 games. We know last year he was shut down pretty early on with a season-ending injury. I got my fingers crossed. I've got a horseshoe. I got the four-leaf clover, and I'm begging to see a full season of Kirby Dach.
Yeah, who is Kirby Dach? In a very small sample size for the Montreal Canadiens, he's looked very good. He's looked as a very capable 1B center, and there was talk about him being the 1A center at times. But critically, can he stay healthy? And we're not talking about taking therapy days or even missing a game or two. Can he avoid major injury for this coming season?
Coming in with our third question, this one's about our newly acquired Patrick Laine, who fans have been very excited to see, and we ask a couple of different things here. First, we are going to say, will Patrick Laine have a strong start to the season? And what does success look like for him this year? So I know a lot of people, the moment he was acquired, started putting out the expectation that he would be a 40, 50 goal scorer, but I'm going to ask, is that realistic? Is that really what we expect from Patrick Laine? The most goals he's scored, 44, that came in 2017. The last time he played a full 82 games with it was in 2019. He struggled with some injuries. He struggled with his mental health in recent history here. We've talked about that at length, and I think these are two very important questions because Patrick Laine, we expect him to help with the offense, but what's a realistic expectation here?
Yeah, and this is a fresh start for him. He hasn't played a regular season NHL game in almost a year. December 14th, had the clavicle injury and then went on the player assistance program. We know all that. So it might be expected for him to have a slow start. And we talked last week that line, the second line, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, Patrick Laine, they've not gelled just yet. Patrick Laine has been very critical, and he said to the media, I'm going to be the most critical, and you're going to hear that from me. I'm going to be my most vocal critic. And he's not been happy with his game in the preseason. He said that he needs to play. We'll see if it happens, but he wants to play every single game remaining in the preseason because he said he needs the reps. He just feels rusty. And what happens if he gets off to a slow start? How's he going to react? How are Canadiens fans going to react? Are they going to be patient with him? What's going to define, what does success look like for him? Are Canadiens fans going to be satisfied with, you talked about 50 goals. What about a 50-point season, 20 goals, 30 assists? Is that going to be enough? That might be pretty good given where he was last year, and it may be a pretty good addition to the Canadiens lineup given their lack of goal production last year. But is that going to satisfy Canadiens fans? That's a big question they're going to be watching this season.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and I love everything you just brought up there. Coming in with our next question, and I'll get a little bit of a mathy explanation from you about this one, Rick. Will the Canadian special teams meet the 100 rule this season? So for their special teams last year, the power play operated at 17.5%, and their PK operated at 76.5%. So, Rick, for those that don't know, what is the 100 rule?
It's kind of just a quick and dirty way of determining if your special teams are having an impact. And the rule is that if you get to 100, adding the success percentages, both the penalty killing percentage and the power play percentage, if you get beyond 100, you should have a pretty good chance of making the playoffs. As you said, 17.5 on the power play last year, success rate 76.5, which gets you to 94. And obviously the Canadiens weren't a playoff team. And because those numbers, they were in the bottom five more or less for power play and PK last year. Can they get to that point this year? Marty St. Louis has a new focus. They have new weapons available to them. Mac Matheson says he's said that there's special emphasis on special teams this year. We know that the power play was an issue, but let's not forget about the penalty kill. And Sam Montembeault, the expected goals on the PK was one of the worst in the league. He's got to up his game. The penalty killers have to up their games. And the power play obviously gets talked about a lot. So will they make it to that 100 threshold? And will that mean that they're having a season where they're climbing up through the rankings based on their special teams?
Yeah, that's perfect on your end, and appreciate the math explanation. I think that should be pretty easy for people to figure out if they meet that 100 rule.
Yeah.
Coming in with our next question, we're going to talk some goaltending. Can Sam Montembeault handle the load of a number one goaltender for the Canadiens this season? Last season, he played a career high 41 goals. And I'm unsure how the Montreal Canadiens are going to split the net here, given that it will most likely be a Sam Montembeault, Caden Primo tandem. We know last year there was a 3-goalie tandem with Jake Allen in the mix up until the trade deadline, essentially. So I'm expecting both goaltenders to play more games, but certainly curious how they're going to split this, and if Sam Montembeault is going to be able to carry the load of playing more of those games.
Yeah, and I think there's two things to look at here. There's the number. You said he played 41 games last year, played 40 games for the Canadiens the year before. Is it going to be kind of a 2/3, 1/3 split between him and Montembeault? Sam has said he'd like to play more than 50 games this year, so there's the wear and tear and the workload, and can he manage all of that? But also just the mental aspect of this is the first year that he is coming into the season as the unequivocal number one goaltender. Last year, the 3-goalie rotation and made it a bit of a mess, but it's Sam's crease this year, and what's he going to do? Is he going to be able to handle the mental aspect of it and the physical workload of playing probably more than 50 games?
And if he does play more than 50 games, I want to see him being the starter against those more difficult playoff teams, unlike a large chunk of last year where he was the one playing against some of the weaker teams, and it was either Allen or Primo playing off against the more difficult playoff teams. So I'd like to see him be more of that undisputed number one to an extent.
Really good point. Also had a text last week asking, what are the most games that he has played and not in his career, and that goes back to junior hockey with the Armada. He played 52 games that season. He only had an .891 save percentage, so maybe the wear and tear factored in there. Played for a pretty good team though at that point. So he's going to have to goals against, as Jeff Gorton said, they're going to have to go down for the Canadiens to rise in the standings, and the goaltending is just going to have to be better.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And we kind of hinted at this a few times. We knew this question was coming up. With higher expectations, will Marty St. Louis change his approach to coaching, and what impact will Roger Grillo have on the coaching staff? So this is an interesting one. This kind of relates to the power play a little bit. I think this might relate to some lineup decisions. I'm really not sure what to expect from Marty here, but certainly looking forward to watching his decision making this upcoming season.
He's acknowledged that he's going to have to change as the expectations for the team changes. Up till now, you can argue that his role has been to make it fun to come to the rink when the Canadiens are, it's tough to get professionals engaged when you're losing and you're at the bottom of the standings and you're playing for not playing for a place in the standings, but you're playing for a high draft pick. And so he's had the challenge of making it fun for the guys. Now the expectations rise. Well, the expectations on him rise too. And maybe he starts getting asked tougher questions. as well. He's acknowledged. He understands that's coming. Roger Grillo, hired as a coaching consultant, not going to be on the bench, going to be a resource. What impact is he going to have? How's he going to be used? Where are we going to see a change? That's going to be interesting. We don't know. And again, these are questions that we're going to have to keep on our list and keep following throughout the year.
And continuing with the theme of coaching, what will be the impact of Pascal Vincent in Laval, and will fans accept a change in focus? So we know, particularly last year when JF Wool was the head coach of the Laval Rocket, there was a lot of emphasis put on veterans and trying to win, although they didn't really win very much in the process there. Will that change, and will there be more of an emphasis on younger players, developing those prospects, giving big opportunities to younger players and big moments, even if it doesn't end up leading to the end result that you want and winning? So there's a lot to think about here, and looking forward to seeing what Pascal Vincent can do. He said all the things that I like to hear so far. I'd like to see him put his money where his mouth is.
It's interesting, and Pascal Vincent is a good teacher. He has that experience. He did with the Manitoba Moose and preparing some of the Jets prospects. He has a good resume in that regard, and as you said, he's said all the right things. That the focus will be on development of the players who are going to someday make an impact for the Montreal Canadiens. That will be his focus. That's very, very different from the way that JF Wool approached it. JF Wool said that development would occur in practice. Development would occur when the development team, but led by Adam Nicholas, would come in and run practice, and that it was his job to win for the good fans. That's a word for word for the good fans in Laval. And also, there was a heavy veteran presence. There was a heavy local flavor to JF Wool lineup. And that's going to change, at least the words of Pascal Vincent, that's going to change considerably. And will fans accept that? I think they will if they understand what's going on. And if you're there there's going to be some really good players in Laval, whether it's Reinbach or Engstrom or Heinemann or Sean Farrell, all of this talent that's there, Florian Jacquet. These are going to be fun games if you're invested in the Canadiens prospects. And if you can make that adjustment, I think there's going to be just as much of a chance to win. Certainly, given Wool's track record there, but it's going to take fans going through a period of adjustment.
Yeah, and maybe I can only speak for myself in this situation, but attending a Laval game last season, purely as a fan, the two players I was most excited to see, Jakub Dobish and Logan Mailloux. So yeah. I know that if I'm thinking that way, I'm sure a lot of other people will think that way as well. And looking forward to seeing them with an abundance of prospects this season too.
For sure.
Our next question, and I think this is really well done by you, Rick. So full credit there. Will Kent Hughes expose a player with who is not exempt to waivers this season? We know last season Yoel Armia was put on waivers and sent to Laval, but at the same time there was concern over putting Caden Primo and Michael Pizzetta on waivers because they didn't want to lose them. So it's an interesting question for Kent Hughes. We know there are a couple players that were brought in that will require waivers if they want to go to Laval. I think Alex Barry-Boulet is someone that you've felt has been earmarked for Laval a little bit. Will we see that happen? And will Kent Hughes be okay with the possibility of maybe losing a player just because they don't make the team out of camp?
This is critical, and will decide which way Kent Hughes is going to play this season. We've heard the general manager we've heard it many times. We played his quotes many times saying that it's his belief that young players will force his hand to make roster decisions. Marty St. Louis has said, he uses the phrase, steal a chair. You're going to grab a chair. You're going to steal a chair. You're going to try to keep that chair, to describe the same process of roster decisions. So, could Oliver Kapanen have done anything more to steal a chair, to force the hand of Kent Hughes? Could Owen Beck? Could Logan Mailloux? Could any of these players have done more? And that's going to it's going to be interesting to see. I thought it was fascinating. Marty said this week, when players raise their value, he was talking about raising your value, and that he said that either for the organization or for others organizations looking in. And his quote was, when players raise their value, people in charge will have to make tough decisions. And that's one of those tough decisions is, are you going to put a Pezzetta on waivers? Are you going to, a player who's not waiver exempt, in order to make room for a player who's proven himself, and done what you've asked him to do, force your hand, as the phrase goes. This is going to be and we're going to know that relatively quickly. And just because Kent Hughes decided to go one way last year doesn't necessarily mean he'll do the same thing this year.
Yeah, and a bit of a follow-up to that in terms of Kent Hughes. The next question we have is, will Kent Hughes hold on to any pending free agents until the end of the season, foregoing an opportunity to add an asset? So we have a few upcoming free agents for next summer. Christian Dvorak, Yoel Armia, Jake Evans, and one Savard, and David Savard. That's going to be interesting. I know David Savard is a fan favorite at the moment. Will he forgo an opportunity to add an asset here just to hang on to him, or how is he going to play this? I know Kent Hughes in the past with his trade deadlines, when he does well, he does well, and when he misses an opportunity, he certainly misses an opportunity.
It's one of the things that kind of drove Canadiens fans nuts about Marc Bergevin, hanging on to players that he could have parlayed into an asset and then losing them for nothing. We've heard that complaint before. And Kent Hughes, I think early on when he came in, was very definitive, saying that he's not going to miss the opportunity. He's not going to lose a player for nothing. He's going to use that as a way to add assets. Canadiens got a lot of assets now. They've got a lot of draft picks. So does that release him from that obligation or following up with what he said? Would he be willing to hold on to David Savard for the entire season, holding him on to him past the trade deadline, and then letting him walk at the end? If the Canadiens are close to making the playoffs or in the ballpark, or there's something gelling between, you say, a Lane Hudson and a David Savard, will you just keep them anyway, even if you aren't in a playoff position? I think Kent Hughes's previous stance is going to be tested this year to see if that's evolved as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And with our final burning question here, it's actually kind of a slew of different questions, so bear with me. Will more than one rookie make the Canadiens opening night roster? So you have Lane Hudson as an option, Owen Beck, Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen, Logan Mailloux, David Reinbacher. Who are the 7 defensemen who are going to make the opening night roster? Will we have Lane Hudson spend any time in Laval this season, just as a follow-up? But I'll let you take it away here, Rick. So
Lane Hudson will make the opening night lineup. We said that in the summer. There's nothing that's happened. He's shown his ability. He's not perfect. heaven forbid he's not perfect. We've seen some, we saw him lose foot races. This Anthony Richard of all people, and former Laval Rocket. Speaking of former Laval Rocket players, but he has the Canadiens want him in the lineup. They want him to have that NHL experience, and he has been superb through training camp. So he will make the roster. Mark it down. You can put it in pen. But the question is, will more than one rookie? So we'll set aside Lane Hutson for now. But is the lineup such that are they heavy at forward? So there's no room for anyone else? Are they because of contract situations? Are they going to take the easy route and send all the defensemen down? You mentioned some of them under consideration. Owen Beck, the forwards, Owen Beck, Emil Heineman, Oliver Kapanen. Kapanen would go back to Timrå, Heineman and Beck to the Rocket. It would be easy to do that. Wouldn't cause any problems. You could send Logan Mailloux had a terrific season in the AHL. You could send him down. I think Reinbacher, in my books, is set for Laval. He needs to understand the North American game. He looked a bit lost against the Leafs. But yeah, what is going to happen there? Is Kent Hughes going to be true to his word that if you force his hand, is he going to find a place for you? Are they going to follow what Marty said, and that tough decisions are going to have to be made by management if you prove your value, if you raise your value, as Marty said? This is, I think, the easy way is that one rookie, Lane Hutson, will make the lineup, but that kind of goes against what the system, the merit system, and I understand there's contract issues and the waiver exemptions and all that kind of thing. But is this going to be truly a merit-based system? And are we going to be able to count on the word of Kent Hughes when he says something? We're going to the Lane Hutson and Laval question is kind of separate, and don't panic if that happens. He may need some games to just to re-energize his confidence if he goes through a rough patch during the year. But I think the other part of this is going to be really interesting to see how Kent Hughes puts out an opening night roster.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and I'm excited to see it. I think that there's certainly some opportunity. I just want to see the Montreal Canadiens fall through with it. So I guess that technically were our 10 questions, but of course we have a bonus, right? Of course, there's too many questions to not have a bonus here. So if you're ready, this is a pretty fun bonus question, and I will ask it right here. Which Canadiens prospect in the CHL, NCAA, or Europe will make the biggest impact this season? So in the CHL, you have Tyler Thorpe, you have Owen Protz. In the NCAA, you have Michael Hage, the first-round pick from this past season, Jacob Fowler, who we've seen look really good, Logan Sawyer, that we've also talked about. And then over in Europe, quite a few other names too. Ivan Demidov in the KHL, Bogdan Kanushkov, Evgeny Volokin, Philip Eriksson, Atus Koivu, who scored a goal this morning, Vincenz Rohr that we talked about in segment 2, the possibility of an Oliver Kapanen going back to Europe if he doesn't crack that NHL lineup. There's certainly a lot of interesting prospects here, and a lot of them over in Europe that will be fun to keep an eye on.
And of course, this isn't the complete list of Montreal Canadiens prospects in the CHL, NCAA, and Europe. These we figured were the most likely to make an impact for their teams and make and be able to show the most growth over the course of the season. We might have to make this exercise fair. We might have to take Ivan Demidov out of the rankings and look at the rest. Tyler Thorpe is off to a great start to his season. Many of these prospects are. Quentin Miller, you might be asking, what about the Q goaltender Quentin Miller? Well, he was injured in training camp. He had shoulder surgery. He's going to be out 6 months. He's not going to be on this list. But and the other goaltender, Jacob Fowler, of course, spectacular rookie season. What's he going to do this season? We've talked our prospect focus each week. We've talked about Volokin. We've talked about Kanushkov. Today, Roar, Koivu. This is a really there's some great players in camp, but there's some really good players not in camp right now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that sends us pretty well into our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And I might even give you some ideas of who you might consider for this, as we are going to ask all of our listeners who are the most overrated and underrated Canadiens prospects. Very excited to hear from each and every one of you. And we'll give you some time to think about it as we head into our final break here. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. And here's Amy to tell us a little bit more about that.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's back to school time for the kids, right? Well, let me ask you something. Take just a second and think about what something is that you'd like to learn. I'm going to freely admit I'm one of those lifelong learners. Call me a nerd if you want, but I love learning new things and learning about things. Whether it's history, whether it's science, whether it's language, whether it's art, whether it's, you name it. I find so much satisfaction out of learning things. I think some of that stems from just natural curiosity, but the other part of it is that it makes you feel like you've accomplished something when, hey, I learned this today. And it could be something that takes 5 minutes, or it could take 5 weeks if you take like an online course or something like that. There's so many things that we try to make time for during the course of a day. Carving out a little bit of time to learn something new isn't always at the top of the priority list either. But kids are always like learning and growing. We lose a little bit of that curiosity as adults. And I think sometimes when we stumble upon something that really grabs our attention, it kind of reawakens that awe that we had as kids in that natural curiosity. So again, I ask, what's something that you would like to learn? Is it a new language? Is it how to garden, how to cook something? Is it, figuring out how to, the ins and outs of electronics or computers, or maybe it's even a new sport that you'd like to learn how to do? So you might be asking, how does all of this relate to the fact that at the top of this spot, you said this show is sponsored by BetterHelp? Well, therapy can help you reconnect with that whole sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come really at any age. Therapy isn't necessarily just about talking. It's about learning as well. And it's about learning positive coping skills or how to set boundaries in your life. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And really, it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. It can just be as simple as taking a few minutes a day for a little bit of self-care. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And you just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And hey, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you just feel like you're not completely gelling with the therapist you're originally matched with. Rediscover your curiosity this back to school season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN.
Welcome back to episode 315 of the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, you can check out our website, canadiensconnection.fm, and feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And that was a pretty fun segment there. We're going to keep an eye on those burning questions as we go into the season. Some of them might get answered, and some of them honestly might not and get postponed another season. But there's always something interesting happening with these Montreal Canadiens.
Absolutely.
And here's what you need to know from Rocket Sports. We cover the Montreal Canadiens, and you can find all of that coverage in one place. Just head over to InsideTheCanadiens.com. We have been a source that you can trust for the past 15 years. Rick, we've been doing this podcast for a number of episodes. I believe this is season 7 as well, every single Saturday.
Season 7 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, 315 episodes. Yet to that, this podcast is kind of the son of Habs 360. That was a podcast, about 250 episodes. We started in podcasting every Saturday in and around 2011, 2012. We've been doing this quite a while. And we're very grateful for those fans who have been loyal, some of them way back to the Habs 360 days.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And we do all sorts of other types of content as well. Make sure that you check out our YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs. You'll be able to pull it up. And on there, every single Monday, this podcast will appear. Last week's episode was entitled Montreal Canadiens Rookies. Can Doc, Lina, and Hudson lead Canadiens to victory? So if you like that, leave a like, leave a comment as well. We love getting comments from all of our viewers on our YouTube channel. And make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss a single episode. We have a Rocket Hockey Report returning soon. That's coming up with the Laval Rocket season. That should be on Tuesdays that those come out. But on Thursday, we had a brand new episode of the Habs Hockey Report. Amy put this together, the Montreal Canadiens preseason. My 15 biggest takeaways, and it was a great episode. Nice to have that back. Leave a like, leave a comment, get involved in that conversation. But most importantly, subscribe so that you never miss any of our content on our YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports Radio podcast on your favorite podcast app, The Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode of Canadiens Connection at canadiensconnection.fm. We're here every single Saturday. We don't go on vacation. We're here throughout the entire off season. We don't like to go away during Christmas either. No breaks, continuing to bring you some great Montreal Canadiens content. And if you like the show, you can give us a little bit of extra appreciation by leaving us a 5-star review. If you want to do a little bit more than that, you can share the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, or on any of your social medias. That goes a long way into helping us out. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And Rick, we have a little bit of a Rocket Sports team announcement. We're looking for some kind and friendly, passionate hockey fans to reach out to us.
We are, for two different reasons. Let me mention the fantasy hockey reason first. We talked a few weeks ago about our fantasy football leagues. Those are off and running. There's 3 leagues, I believe, and pretty stiff competition in each. Doing pretty well this season. But we also have fantasy hockey, and our dear commissioner, Brian, is setting up those leagues. If you want to participate in fantasy hockey with the Rocket Sports team, with fellow Canadiens fans, reach out to us via text 5853-ROCKET, send us an email, or reach out to us on social media. The other reason we want you to contact us is if you want to be part of this great Rocket Sports team. And if you're dedicated, if you're committed, if you want to get involved a little bit more, you're such a passionate fan that you want to be, you have a voice, you have something to say, then you can join us by writing. You can join us by being on the podcast, behind the scene with graphics, with production of the podcast, with the YouTube videos. We're glad to hear from you. So be sure to reach out to us.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun to be part of the Rocket Sports Media team. During my experience, I've had the opportunities to attend the draft when it came through Montreal and host our Rocket Sports team group with some avid listeners as well. I've been in the press box for a few Laval Rocket games and also hosting this podcast weekly. Rick and Amy spent a lot of time working with me to build me up to be a capable host of the podcast. And so it's a lot of fun. You get to learn a lot. You get to be with a great group of people. And certainly recommend, if you're thinking about it, reach out and have a conversation with Rick. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. And with that, a little bit more of a personal announcement coming from me. This will be my last episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. Just want to take some time to thank all the listeners. I'll reach out to the Rocket Sports Media team on my own time here, not to take up the entire third segment here, but thank you to all the amazing listeners here. Certainly grateful for each and every one of you tuning in, whether you've been with us right from the start, this is your first one today, or somewhere in between. It means a lot to me that you've tuned in and listened to everything that I've had to say. Once again, just a big thank you to everyone, and I'm happy to be leaving on good terms, leaving things in good hands, and certainly continuing to encourage everyone to keep listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast and everything that the Rocket Sports Media team does. There's going to be a lot of great content, and I'm looking forward to following along this season as an avid listener.
Well, we're very grateful. I'm personally very grateful for your commitment, your dedication to this podcast. Those years ago when you reached out and said you wanted to be involved, and the way you've grown on the podcast, I think you've learned a few things, and certainly your confidence has grown, and you've even assumed a bit of a leadership role with our live streams on YouTube, and as you mentioned, some interviews and in the press box, involved with the draft, and reliable on this podcast, and we're very grateful for all your contributions, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, appreciate hearing that, and big thanks to you for taking all the time to mentor and taking a chance on me. This has meant a lot to me over the years, and gonna make a little bit of a difficult transition here as we this is the Have Your Say segment. So we do want to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week here, as we ask all of our listeners, who do you think the most overrated and underrated Canadian prospects are? I know I'm gonna answer this one for you, Rick.
All right.
But looking forward to hearing from each and every one of the listeners on next week's episode as well. I know over the week we also get tons of text, tweets, and emails, comments on our YouTube channel as well, and there are a few that you wanted to share with us today, Rick.
Yeah. As far as this week's question, overrated, underrated, again, 585 through Rocket, send in who you think is the most overrated, the most underrated. Underrated, I'll throw out some names, Emil Heineman, Owen Beck. How about Jakub Dobish, who stood tall, and he is a big goaltender at Scotiabank in Toronto. Overrated, Joshua Waugh gets a whole lot of attention, and I thought it was interesting this past week. We remember Corey Pronman's pipeline rankings, or he ranked all of the Canadiens prospects. And he ranked Joshua Waugh number 14 in terms of prospects, 13 prospects ahead of him. That didn't sit well with Canadiens fans. And I saw there was a bit of an interview by Arpon Basu with Corey Pronman this week. He stands by that, his rating, but I thought it was an interesting little piece that came out this week in that regard. We want to hear what your opinion is about the most overrated, most underrated Canadiens prospects. This week, we're going to ask A different question. That was this week, but last week we asked a different question, and we got a lot of response, and we talked a lot about who was going to have the biggest impact on the season, whether it was a Kirby Dach being there all season, Patrik Laine, or the addition of a dynamic player like Lane Hutson. Let's go to YouTube, and we heard from Frank Huber 9912. He says, good show this week. Biggest impact, positive, will be Lane Hutson, but only if Marty starts him on the first power play and keeps him there. Well, he wasn't there to practice on Friday, but we'll see. And negative impact, Marty. Marty is better suited to serve as Canada's Governor General and well away from heavy machinery or anything else he needs to operate reliably. All right. And he goes on, but that's an interesting comment. We have Brendan Aucoin, who says Hutson will be the biggest impact. He plays defense in a unique way. He will control the puck for a minute or two until a setup, and the enemy is waiting on what's next. He says no control of the game with frustration instead of offense. That D is a different way and defined by a control of the game. All right. Matt Anderson says people will be watching these guys, and the guys named Kirby Dach, Lane Hutson, and Patrik Laine. People will be watching these guys, but it takes all 20 players playing as a team to win, and that is the job of the coaching staff. So he feels that the coaching staff will have the biggest impact. Quite a few texts. This one I found interesting. 5853 Rocket. Didn't leave a name for us, but he said, hey all, I'm an expat living in Austin, Texas. I love the show. Chances are good for a playoff run. Preseason is supposed to mean nothing. Game 1 was great. Game 2, meh. Still a victory. My wife is from here in Texas, but is a new diehard Habs fan. I'll be home in April to take in the Bruins game and also a Laval game. Can't wait. Hope to see y'all there. And so that's from expat fan. Leave your name next time. First name from Austin, Texas.
So appreciate hearing all of those text, tweets, emails, and comments throughout the week. Like I said, we do get a ton of them, so I encourage everyone to keep reaching out and letting us know their thoughts. Coming up this week, we have a number of important dates as the preseason schedule continues. On today, Saturday, September the 28th, the Toronto Maple Leafs will be visiting the Montreal Canadiens as they play at home. And then I believe on October the 1st, the Ottawa Senators are coming to town to face off against the Montreal Canadiens. And the final preseason game is going to be on October the 5th, once again, but against Ottawa, but in Ottawa this time. So that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on any of your favorite podcasting apps. That way you never miss a single episode. You can also share it on social media if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week, and we'll be back here next Saturday, October the 5th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.